Good evening and welcome back to the Airborne Lawyer YouTube channel, and welcome back to Rio de Janeiro. Unmistakably Rio de Janeiro. Here's Christ the Redeemer. We've got the Lagoa Rodrigo de Freitas just down there, Ipanema Beach, Copacabana Beach. Just coming into view is Sugarloaf Mountain. That's Santos Dumont Airport down there, which will be taking off from very, very shortly. And now this is downtown Rio coming into view. Just near the centre of the picture there you can see the famous Maracana Stadium, which has played host to both the 1950 World Cup and, after a 3-year renovation project between 2010 and 2013, the 2014 World Cup. Before the days of all-seater stadiums, 200,000 people got back into that stadium, apparently. And now we head towards Centro, the downtown core of Rio. You can see all the train lines just to the left of the picture there, heading into Brazil Central Station. You can see the high-rise buildings of the downtown. There's a green square there, which is the Campo de Santana. And then just centre right of the picture, there's the Catedral Metropolitana de São Sebastião do Rio de Janeiro. I'm quite proud that I've managed to say that. And now just in front of us, Santos Dumont Airport, where we're departing from today for Sao Paulo. So just before we get the plane set up, let's take a look at the route which we're going to be covering in this episode of the TBM 930 World Tour. So first of all, we go from Rio down the coast to Sao Paulo, then we head south from Sao Paulo down to Porto Alegre, and then we will be saying farewell to Brazil and flying across Uruguay and down to Buenos Aires, and en route we're going to fly over Montevideo. So let's get underway then and take to the skies and head down to Sao Paulo. It is not a long flight, this one. Just a couple of 100 miles down the coast from Rio. Just whilst the engines are starting, probably the safe thing to do to shut the doors. I do love how the sound changes as you close the doors. Just again adds to that realism. Let's get some fuel into the engines. Because it's not very high, we're going to go up to just 11,000 feet and hopefully just enjoy the coastal scenery as we go. We're going to climb up initially to 11,000 feet at a rate of 1,800 knots. Once we hit 140 knots, I'm going to switch it over to flight level change mode. The weather's looking pretty clear, so I'm not going to use the weather radar on this flight just now. But I will pop on the second map so we can see the full route, or just about anyway, alongside the route I will use on the left-hand side here for navigation purposes. So, as the ITT starts to cool off a bit, I'm going to turn on the bleeds. Going to switch the auxiliary boost pump to auto, fuel selectors to automatic, AP trims go on. Check the flight controls. On the way into Rio the other day we landed on 02 right. This time we're going to take off from 20 left, so from the other end, facing Sugarloaf Mountain. So I'm going to take off, and I'm not sure exactly what the procedure would be on flight charts. I'm not flying this on VATSIM actually, just deliberately so that I can enjoy the scenery to the full. I'm going to take off and just head over to the left of Sugarloaf Mountain, just over there, and then bend around and again just see that coastline of Rio one last time. I'll turn on the pitos and let's now call out the pushback tug. So I'm not on VATSIM, but I am flying real world weather, and interestingly enough, the pressure is 1013, or altimeter 2992. So it would appear that we are not going to need to change the altimeter setting when we go through transition altitude. I don't know why this happens, but the pushback trolley is now going around the side here. Above all else, one would imagine that that would be at risk of causing very serious, if not potentially fatal, injury. I'll just get the taxi lights while we're going back. And I'll just feather the prop twice as well. That'll do. I'll also set the flaps for takeoff. Right, let's go, let's taxi out. This beautiful evening in Rio is, I'm afraid, not mirrored where I'm actually sat doing this simulated flight. In real life outside, the winds are howling. This is meant to be when the weather starts getting better in May, but it's absolutely howling out there. The weather is horrible. I can hear rain splattering against the window next to me. So again, the escapism of flight sim is to get away from all of that and instead to find yourself in a perfectly sunlit Rio de Janeiro in late spring. So not a long taxi out by any stretch. I'll now turn on the landing lights, turn on the strobes and the pulse. That is 20 right, we're going to go to 20 left. And away we go. Sao Paulo is our next stop. And rotate. Gear up. Bring in the flaps as we take in this spectacular view of Sugarloaf Mountain on our way out. There's Copacabana Beach. You can still see Christ the Redeemer up there, looking down on the city. This really is what Flight Sim was always meant to be about, I think. Where it's so beautiful and so realistic that you can't stop looking at it. You almost don't know what to look at next. It's just like being in a real plane where you're trying to spot everything all at once. And when it's bathed in this kind of sunlight, it's especially spectacular. So I have neglected my duties over here as a pilot, which means that we're now climbing rather more quickly, as in speed-wise, because we're doing 180 knots. So I'm just going to switch that over now to flight level change, and I'll attend to that shortly once we've got past this super view. So that's Ipanema Beach down there. Very nice indeed. So let's head on now to Sao Paulo, and as usual I will time-lapse the flight and speak to you in just a few moments' time once we're on approach. So welcome back to the flight and welcome to Sao Paulo. And in researching about Sao Paulo for the purposes of this flight, I had absolutely no idea of just what a huge metropolis Sao Paulo is, and I'm getting a sense of this now flying over it. It stretches out pretty much as far as the eye can see. It kind of reminds me a bit of Los Angeles and other huge cities of that nature. And it is not only the most populous city in Brazil, it is the most populous city in all of the Americas, in the entirety of the Western Hemisphere, and indeed the Southern Hemisphere. I had absolutely no idea about any of that before researching this city for the purposes of making this video. So it's the capital of the surrounding state of Sao Paulo. This is the wealthiest part of Brazil, and it has a strong international influence as well on commerce, finance, the arts and entertainment. Now, from a flying perspective, at the moment I'm just trying to find our airport. Oh, there it is! I just spotted the green light just as I said that. So we aren't flying into Sao Paulo Guarulhos. airport. We are flying into Sao Paulo's Congonhas airport, and that is it just down there. So we're looking to land on runway 17 right, which is the runway just on the right hand side right in front of us there. And I have never landed into this airport before, so I did just want to take a look at it and do a circuit before we touch down. So I have been to Gorillas before on Prepare 3D, flying direct from London, but this will be a first visiting this airport. And what lovely weather to land in. It's been a fantastic sunset all the way down. The time-lapse video as well, I think will really make the most of that sunset, because we'll see the sun dropping really quickly and barely a cloud in the sky. And after lots of flying in recent weeks on the TBM 930 World Tour through the Amazon, where the weather has been hot, humid, wet and full of electric storms, it's nice to see a cloudless sky. So what I'm just going to do here is make a left turn at some stage and do a downwind leg. I think those flashing lights in the distance are Gorillas International Airport. So yeah, I'm going to turn now and do a downward leg and fly down this way for a couple of minutes, and then I'll turn onto my base and then onto final. And we'll park up here for the night, and then I'll get the drone out and take a look at Sao Paulo in daylight tomorrow morning. From here, the TBM 930 World Tour will continue down the coast of Brazil to Porto Alegre, which is going to be a couple of hours flying time in the TBM from here. And after that we will be bidding farewell to Brazil and heading down to Uruguay and Argentina. So that's still to come in this episode. Don't forget, I have put chapters into this video, so do feel free to click through to the bits you'd most like to see and jump ahead to see the cities which we're going to be visiting in turn. Now I think that will do. Let's turn onto our base leg now. That should give us enough distance to do a decent final. Again, the night scenery is almost as spectacular as the day scenery. That sunset is absolutely beautiful. You can easily forget you're looking at computer graphics. And the night lights are kind of captivating in their own way. They really shine and stand out. To any newcomers who have only recently taken an interest in Flight Simulator, I cannot understate the extent to which Flight Sim has not always looked this good. Just looking again at the city down here, you can see lots of tall buildings, and when I was researching for this video I also read that this huge metropolis is home to several of the tallest skyscrapers in Brazil. It's more high-rise than pretty much any other city in the country. No doubt because it's so populous and has so many people to house. Just to put that in context, I've said it's the most populous place in the Western Hemisphere, Southern Hemisphere, all the Americas, etc. But the megalopolis of Sao Paulo is home to some 30 million people. Now, I don't have a doctorate in geography, but the only other place I can think of with numbers like that is China. So this really is an enormous city in all respects. So it was always going to be a dead cert to come and visit Sao Paulo as part of the TBM 930 World Tour. Okay, I'm going to turn on to final now. I think we're just trying to see. I think we're going to be okay here. Yeah, that's looking good. That's looking good. Okay, so I'm just going to concentrate a little bit on my landing at this point.
Landing gear.
Okay, so we'll get the flaps out. Okay, so the flaps are now fully out, and I now just want to catch the speed at about 85 knots, which is our standard approach speed in the TBM. Again, lots of high-rise buildings here all around us. Not quite kind of New York high-rise or Chicago high-rise, but still. More high-rise than we've seen in much of South America, I would have to say. I assume most of these buildings are all residential tower blocks. They certainly look it. Might just be able to tell I'm getting pushed a little bit off the centre line by a slight crosswind here. It's kind of coming from my 2 to 3 o'clock. But this is looking good. No PAPI lights here, so I'm doing this entirely visually. I'm also not tuned into the ILS. But I'm quite happy with this. This will be good, I think. That'll do. I've said it many times on other videos that I've put up on the channel, but the real magic of flight sim is that every flight is different. Every landing is different. The challenge is responding to the weather and circumstances that you find yourself in on any given approach. Right, so let's find somewhere over here to park up. I'm not quite sure which part of this airport is designated for private jets and private turboprops like the TBM. Turn off the strobes and the pulse lights. Although I appear to have lost my taxi lights, so let's get those back on. Once we've parked up and shut the plane down, we'll go and take a look at Sao Paulo in the drone. I'm just gonna hang a right here and park it up over here. This'll be fine. Feels quite weird when you're used to flying on VATSIM and you get told a specific gate to go and park at. It seems quite strange to just randomly find a spot of concrete to pop the plane down for a bit. But this will do just fine. Okay, let's shut the plane down. Parking brake on. Turn that off. Engine feathered. Landing taxi lights off. Auxiliary boost pump off. AP trims off. Fuel selectors to manual. All the usual stuff. Bleeds off. Pito's off. Engine off. There we go. So again, this gives us a sense of the scale of this vast city. I've taken the drone right up here. You can see just how big Sao Paulo is. Now, I don't know Sao Paulo at all, so I'm just going to have a look around. That, I believe, from Google Maps is the Sao Paulo Jockey Club, just down there. And then this patch of green up here looks to be called the Ibirapuera Park. And I think this bit over here is then perhaps the core of the downtown, the high-rise bit of Sao Paulo. Stadium down there is Allianz Park, which I assume is home to Sao Paulo's football club. And we're just turning back now towards the airport. The Jockey Club again over on the right hand side. And here's the airport just in front of us. So we'll get back in the plane now, fire up the engine, taxi out and take off for Porto Alegre. Okay, so let's crack on and get in the air. Let's close up the doors. And we'll shut the front door as well. Such a nice touch having these doors to open and close. I know it's a small thing, but what can I say? I'm easily pleased. Turn on the auxiliary boost pump. Engage the engine starter. And we're now just waiting for the NG to go above 13%. There we go. So we're going to climb up to 31,000 feet today, and we'll be climbing initially at a rate of 1,800 feet a minute. Once we get to 140 knots, I'm going to switch over to flight level change mode. So you can see our route on the right-hand map there, pretty much straight down the Brazilian coast to Porto Alegre. And we'll move the thrust levers over to flight idle. Now we've done that, we'll switch on the bleeds, and we're going to switch the auxiliary boost pump to automatic, fuel selectors to automatic, turn on the AP trims, and turn on the pitos. Test the inert step as well. Check the flight controls. And we'll feather the prop. That's all good. So we are now going to push back. So release the parking brake. That'll do. We'll turn off the inert SEP. Parking brake off, and away we go. There's not much wind about right now, so what I'm going to do is take off on 35 left, just down here. And that will take us back towards the city. So I'll get a few views on our way out. Just as soon as we are above this low cloud. Let's turn on the landing lights now, the pulse and the strobes. And we'll line up. Okay, gear up. And flaps in. I'm now going to turn on the autopilot. As always, I will be time-lapsing the cruise, so we'll be down in Porto Alegre in absolutely no time whatsoever. And I will speak to you again in a few moments once we are on our approach. Enjoy the flight. Welcome back to the flight and welcome to Porto Alegre in the south of Brazil. So Porto Alegre is the capital and largest city of the Brazilian state of Rio Grande do Sul. It is home to about 1.5 million people and is the 12th most populous city in the country. And it's the centre of Brazil's 5th largest metropolitan area. So it's not as big as Sao Paulo, but it's by no means insignificant. It's a big city nonetheless. What we're going to do is stop off here for some fuel before continuing our journey down to Buenos Aires. So we've been close to the South Atlantic all the way down. We've kind of come inland a little bit in some places, but we've largely hugged the coastline. Porto Alegre is only slightly inland, so just over there, you can just about see the South Atlantic, and then it comes into the Patos Lagoon, and then closer into Porto Alegre itself is the Guaíba River just down there. This time we are going to be landing into the international airport. I'm completely unfamiliar with the city. I've never been to Porto Alegre before, either in real life or on Flight Sim, so I'm going to circumnavigate and get a feel for the area before I make an approach. So we're just at 6,000 feet at the moment. There is the airport, just down there. That is the runway which I'll land on. The winds, yeah, we have a headwind right now, so we'll land on the runway in the same direction we are heading in now. But doing a circuit around the city gives us a chance to do a quick bit of sightseeing as well before we touch down. Now, a common sight travelling through Brazil is the sight of a football stadium. So that's the Arena do Grêmio down there. That stadium was inaugurated back in 2012 and is the home stadium of the Grêmio football team. It's one of the most modern sports venues in all of Latin America, opening just ahead of the World Cup in Brazil back in 2014. Now I'm testing my memory. So the World Cup was in South Africa in 2010. Then Brazil hosted the World Cup in 2014, and then Rio hosted the Olympics in 2016. It's actually quite tricky keeping track of all these sports events. Let's start our turn. Pick up the speed a little bit. So there's our airport. That is the international airport serving Porto Alegre, and we're going to be landing on runway 28, which is the other end of the runway from where we are right now. Just going to descend down to 2,000 feet. Once again, I don't actually have any charts for this airport, so I'm doing this entirely by sight. So Porto Alegre was first founded in 1769. It's a city where 5 rivers converge to form the Patos Lagoon, or the Lagoa dos Patos, which is just down here, which means in English the Lagoon of the Ducks. As a result, the city has a history based on maritime trade, with the 5 River Junction becoming an important port and a centre of industry and commerce in Brazil. So we're now going to turn to 100 degrees, which will be our downwind leg. We've got a 25 knot wind behind us, so this is a pretty fast downwind leg we're doing. We're doing a ground speed of 200 knots with an indicated airspeed of just 170 knots. So you can actually see that things are starting to fly by a little bit quicker than they were just a few moments ago. Also, that wind is just causing the plane to wobble around a bit more. What I'm just doing here is seeing if we're able, by any chance, to get an ILS frequency for our approach. I don't think so. Well, I won't worry too much. It's a clear day, so we can just do this by sight alone. Left turn to 010 degrees for our base leg. We should now have a strong crosswind coming from our left-hand side. What I'm going to do now is descend down to... let's go down to 1,500. Yeah, we can descend now a safe distance from those hills. Otherwise we're nicely set up for landing. Landing lights on. We'll put the flaps out shortly. And once we're on final approach, I'll put the gear down as well. It's interesting seeing the changing colours. So in episode 10 of the TBM 930 World Tour, the colour of the ground was a bit orangey. Up in Brasilia it's more sun-baked, I suppose. We're now much further south, and again it's more of a lush green. I say all of this knowing full well that I'm not an expert on South America. But it's interesting noticing these kinds of changes and differences as you travel across this kind of distance. So I've just disconnected the autopilot and turned off the yaw damper. That's runway just over there. Looks good. And I think I can now see the PAPI approach lights, which suggest that we are nicely on the glide slope. So I'm going to start slowing up and get the gear down. Gear down selected. And 3 green. Flaps. The wind has calmed down a little bit. It's now down to about 8 knots. Flying the downwind leg a few moments ago is up at about 25 knots. Flaps full. So just a quick stop here at Porto Alegre before we head down to Argentina. On the way down to Buenos Aires, we're also going to fly over Montevideo. I'm never quite sure how you pronounce it. Okay, I've had better landings than that, I think, but that will have to do. Pretty firm, and then we kind of veered slightly from the centre line once we touched down. So I'm going to take the next right and find somewhere to park up. The flaps whilst I'm doing that. Turn off the pitot heats. Landing lights can come off, as can the pulse and strobe lights. Just park up alongside the other TBM over there, I think. That'll do. So parking brake on. And taxi lights off. We will turn off the APE trims. Auxiliary boost pump off. Ignition off. Bleeds off. Open the door. And we'll shut down the engine. Good evening and welcome back to Porto Alegre Airport here in southern Brazil. We are preparing the TBM 930 ready for departure to Buenos Aires in Argentina, where we're going to be flying to this evening. You'll see here that the weather has deteriorated somewhat since we arrived a little bit earlier today. It's now much more cloudy, so we're going to keep a careful eye on the weather radar as we climb out. Now, an interesting feature since we were on board the TBM a little earlier on in the day is that we now have a VATSIM controller on at Porto Alegre Airport. Now, we weren't expecting that. It's quite a remote place in some respects, so it'll be interesting to see, first of all, if we can understand each other, and then, of course, importantly, get the IFR clearance that we need down to Buenos Aires. So let's see how we get on. Here in the cockpit, we've got everything set up. So the QNH is 1014. Our cruise altitude as filed is flight level 280. The winds are blowing at 160 degrees at 8 knots. It was quite blow when we came in a little earlier on. It's changed direction slightly, which means that we're going to be taking off from the other end of the runway. So I think I have all that I need now to call up the controller on 118.1, which I have tuned into the radio right here. Porto Alegre Tower, good afternoon. Golf Tango Echo Whiskey Alpha is type TBM 930 on the ground at Porto Alegre with information Oscar QNH 1014 requesting clearance to Sierra Alpha Bravo Echo.
Golf Tango Echo Whiskey Alpha Alegre Tower, good afternoon, Captain. Sorry for the inconvenience, but we are changing the ATIS information just in this moment, okay? Report this again, please.
Roger, and no problem, Golf Whiskey Alpha. So they're just about to update the ATIS, so we'll listen out for that. Or look out for it, in fact, and see what that has to say. So I'm just checking here on my vPilot pilot client, and yes, we now have information Papa, and it's still runway 11. It's still transition level 4,500 feet. The winds are now 150 degrees at 6 knots. So the winds have dropped slightly. Otherwise, it's all much the same. Alt QNH has now gone up to 1015, so let's just change that. There we go. Porto Alegre Tower, Golf Tango Echo Whiskey Alpha TBM 930 with information Papa QNH 1015 requesting clearance to Sierra Alpha Bravo Echo.
Echo Whiskey Alpha, Alegre Tower, flight plan received, Captain. Report and ready to copy.
Ready to copy, Echo Whiskey Alpha.
Echo Whiskey Alpha, instruments approved to Sierra Alpha Bravo Echo, route as filed, flight level 280, departing runway 11, leaving profile Abela 2 Alpha, Abela transition, squawk 3511. Go, read it back, Captain.
Echo Whiskey Alpha cleared to Sierra Alpha Bravo Echo as filed, climbing to flight level 280 and departing runway 11 via the Abela 2 Alpha departure, Arella transition and squawking 3511.
Echo Whiskey Alpha, read it back correctly. Report to Alegre Tower, do you need pushback or just start engine?
We won't need pushback, just start engines will be fine. Echo Whiskey Alpha.
Okay, Echo Whiskey Alpha, report when ready to push and start.
Roger, we will call you shortly. Echo Whiskey Alpha. Well, I think that went quite well. One of my first interactions with VATSIM air traffic control in South America. So, what I'm now just going to do, as we are on VATSIM, is take a look at the map and make sure that I fully understand what my departure route is going to be. So let's just bring this up here. The flight plan already envisages that we're going to be flying an Abella to Alpha departure with the Abella transition. And looking at the map here, it looks pretty much as we have in the flight plan already. So just heading pretty much south to Ilmom and then out to Abella and then pretty much as filed. Worth noting that once we get a little bit further down in this route, I'm going to deviate from the flight plan to head towards Montevideo, and then we'll pick up the flight plan again down near Kovuk down here and fly into Buenos Aires. You'll note that we're flying into Sierra Alpha Bravo Echo, which is not the main international airport in Buenos Aires. This is a smaller airport which is nearer the downtown city centre and also right on the waterfront, so we thought that might be quite scenic for the purposes of the TBM 930 World Tour. So that's what our route looks like, and how novel to be engaging with VATSIM so far away from my usual VATSIM stomping grounds up at Heathrow and sort of mainland Europe. Okay, I think we're about all set to go, so I'm going to now request engine start. Porto Alegre Tower, request engine start. Golf Tango Echo Whiskey Alpha, request engine start.
Echo Whiskey Alpha, clear to start engines, report when ready to push back.
Clear to start engines and call when ready to push. Golf Tango Echo Whiskey Alpha. Okay, so auxiliary boost pump goes on, and let's turn on the starter. Look out for NG passing 13%. There we go. And of course I'm now going to close the door. Just like listening to that engine with the door open. It sounds great. Just going to quickly check down here on the flight plan once again. Yeah, there we go. Ilmom and Abella. That's exactly what we wanted to see there. I shall keep the flight plan up there. Engine warming up nicely.
Oral warning, okay.
And we'll switch the thrust lever over to flight idle. Turn on the bleeds. Switch the auxiliary boost pump to automatic. Fuel selectors to auto. AP trims go on. Pitos can go on. Inert SEP. We'll test the flight controls. I did say that we didn't need to push, but we have this pushback trolley right in front of us, so I guess we can do if needs be. Flight controls are all okay. I'll just feather the prop twice. And that's it. I think we're all set. Porto Alegre Tower, Golf Tango Echo Whiskey Alpha, ready to push.
Echo Whiskey Alpha, Prague Tower, clear to push back, tail to right, Captain.
Push back, tail to the right, Golf Tango Echo Whiskey Alpha. Okay, what I think I'm going to do here is let the pushback tug go. I've just been keeping a careful eye on this Airbus A320 over here. I'm not quite sure whether that plane is on VATSIM or not. Let me check VATScope. I have a horrible feeling we might be getting some AI aircraft appearing here. Yeah, that's an AI plane. So he's not going to be doing anything that relates to the VATSIM controller. Okay, so there we go. I'm now in the position that the tower controller wants me to be in. Echo Whiskey Alpha, request taxi.
Echo Whiskey Alpha, cleared taxi by apron 1, Mike 3, Bravo, Juliet, until the holding point of runway 11, Captain, QNH 1015.
Holding point for runway 11 and QNH 1015. Can you repeat the taxi route? Echo Whiskey Alpha.
Echo Whiskey Alpha, of course I can. Taxi by apron 1, Mike 3, Bravo, Juliet.
Taxi holding point 11 via apron 1, Mike 3, Bravo and Juliet. Echo Whiskey Alpha. Okay. So, parking brake off, and away we go. Get the flaps out. May as well do that.
Porto Alegre Tower, level 4057, heavy at runway 11, ready for takeoff IFR to Campinas.
Level 4057, heavy, cleared for takeoff runway 11.
Cleared for takeoff runway 11 Abdul, 4057 heavy.
So that is AI again there, and I'm not quite sure how we've got AI on this. I thought I turned all that off before putting VATSIM on, but clearly I hadn't, so we are flying alongside some computer generated planes as well. But that's fine. I'm also not quite sure if I'm actually on the designated taxi route, but I think I must be because there aren't many ways to get to the holding point for runway 11, so this must be about right. So let's just let the AI A320 head off. He's taking his time. It's been quite a while on the TBM 930 since I've had to share a runway with other aircraft of any description, AI or otherwise. I'm actually trying to remember the last time that I engaged with VATSIM air traffic control on the TBM 930 World Tour. I think it might be as far back as Teterboro up in New York. Right, I'm now ready to go. So let's call the tower. Porto Alegre Tower, Echo Whiskey Alpha, ready for departure, runway 11.
Echo Whiskey Alpha, Porto Alegre Tower. Captain, you are cleared to take off runway 11, wind 170 degrees 06 knots. Wait for my call after takeoff, Captain.
Clear takeoff, runway 11, copy the winds, and we'll wait for your call after takeoff. Echo Whiskey Alpha.
135.8 for Abdul, 4057 heavy.
I do like the fact that this controller is calling me captain. That's just yeah. That's a real self-esteem boost right there. Okay, we're all set to go. So takeoff power.
Echo Whiskey Alpha, Flag Tower, squad in Charlie mode, Captain.
Squawk Med Charlie, Echo Whiskey Alpha. Not my finest takeoff. I got distracted trying to put the V-pilot into Squawk Mode Charlie. Right, gear up. And I'm just going to wait the call from the tower controller. Flaps up. Switch over
Echo
to
Whiskey Alpha, leave the ground at 1929. Have a good flight, Captain, and coordinate at Unicorn 122.80, Captain.
Thank you for the service, and we'll switch over to Unicom now. Golf Tango Echo Whiskey Alpha. Well, that was fun. So the perfectionist in me thinks, oh, I'd like to redo that because that wasn't my best takeoff. And for some reason, I've got a whole load of AI traffic on at the same time. I've obviously just not turned AI traffic off in the flight condition settings on MSFS 2020, which I normally do if I'm flying on VATSIM. So the perfectionist in me thinks, I should redo that. I should redo that. If I want to put this on YouTube, I should redo that. But then that controller might have logged off. And that was part of the experience there. I was not expecting to have air traffic control leaving Porto Alegre. Maybe leaving Rio. I've had VATSIM control into Rio before. You know, maybe the big cities, but that's a real treat. Coming somewhere so far away from where I normally fly to have a local air traffic controller, that's part of the fun. So we are now about to go through transition altitude. So we're just going to pull the altimeters back to 1013. And away we go. So this is not only farewell to Porto Alegre, which has been a fantastic stop. I've enjoyed that enormously, particularly the air traffic control, as I say. But it's also farewell to Brazil. We've done 3 or 4 flights in Brazil on the TBM 930 World Tour. Let's think. So there was Manaus, then Brasilia, then Rio, then Sao Paulo, and then Porto Alegre. So actually 5 destinations within Brazil. This is the last one. Next time we touch down, we are going to be in Argentina. Now these clouds look decidedly murky. I haven't had a huge amount of success with weather radar on the TBM 930 just yet. I tend to find that everything is red, or you know, or there's nothing on there at all. So it's very difficult to tell whether these are actually dangerous cumulonimbus clouds, but we'll persist anyway and hopefully get through it okay. I'm just looking out for any icing on the wings. Hopefully, climbing up to flight level 280, we should get well above the clouds. And looking at the weather radar, it suggests here that, you know, the clouds do clear. Well, maybe sort of another 10,000 feet above us, something like that, perhaps. Again, just keeping an eye out on the wing for any icing. But that's it from me for the moment. We will speak again very shortly once we get down to Montevideo. As ever, I will now time-lapse the flight and speak to you shortly. Welcome back to the flight. We are just over Montevideo at this point, or Montevideo. I never know quite how to pronounce that. And I've just descended now to I'm descending down to 3,000 feet to get a decent view of the city. This is Montevideo's international airport just below us here. The issue that we're having is trying to see through these clouds. It's been a pretty interesting journey in that respect, because after we climbed out of Porto Alegre we had some pretty dense, heavy clouds of the towering cumulonimbus variety, which went on for some time. And I've had the weather radar on during the entire flight to try and make sure I avoid the worst of any dangerous storm clouds. I'm going to take us down to 2,500 feet. Obviously it's now night time, so we're seeing this in darkness, but this is the capital of Uruguay. And this is the southernmost capital city in all of the Americas. It's fractionally further south than Buenos Aires. It's quite difficult to see on the map on the right hand side over here, but Buenos Aires is just very, very slightly further north. So it's not a massive city. It's got a population of 1.3 million, but it is the largest city in Uruguay, and roughly 1 in 3 people in Uruguay will live in Montevideo. So it's significant for this country. From a kind of regional perspective, Montevideo is similar to this part of the world, South America, to what Brussels is up in Europe. It serves an important trading function. It's the administrative headquarters of Mercosur and ALADI, Latin America's leading trading blocs. Also, the city has reputedly has a very good reputation for quality of life, apparently. It's consistently been ranked as the best place to live in terms of quality life since 2005. So this is just a flyby visit, but since we're down here it seemed like the right thing to do to come and see it anyway. And I've never flown to Uruguay, either in real life or on flight sim, so again it just felt like it felt like something I wanted to do whilst I'm down in this part of the world. This body of water here is relatively narrow, as you can see again on the map on the right hand side of this screen. We've just got to go across a brief stretch of water before we hit Argentina. Just up the speed a bit now that we're leaving Montevideo. It is quite tricky to say Montevideo, as saying that as a British person. It just seems to be quite tricky. When I say it, it sounds like Montevideo, which sounds like some guy called Monty has set up a blockbuster video store, which is slightly unfortunate. Right, I'll now time-lapse the flight until we get to Buenos Aires. So welcome back to the flight. We are now kind of on a base leg into Jorge Newbery Airport in Buenos Aires. We can see the capital extending out, well, pretty much in every direction. Pretty low rise, can't see any sort of tall skyscrapers, but nonetheless it's clearly a very large city. I will be sure to get the drone out to see Buenos Aires in daylight before we depart and carry on with the tour. But it is also quite nice seeing these places at night time, because the effects on Microsoft Flight Sim 2020, like so much else on this piece of software, it's just incredible. It's so much more realistic and just eye-catching is what I was going to say. I'm not quite sure that's exactly what I meant, but it looks so attractive and sparkling in comparison to everything that came before it in the world of simulation. I'm just thinking about those sort of previous iterations of flight simulators where you'd have basically just bronzy gold ground textures and that would be it. So that's our airport just down there. Now we're going too fast and we're too steep to land right now, so what I'm just going to do is do a quick circuit. Not my best bit of flying, that, I have to say. I think I was concentrating too much on the scenery there.
Landing gear.
So there's a stadium down there. I'll take a look with the drone and see what that is.
Landing gear. Landing gear. Landing gear. Landing gear. Landing gear. Landing gear.
I will now put the gear down.
Landing gear.
Still quite steep, but I think this is doable. There we go, one red light. There's the second one coming in. Full flaps. And catch the speed at 85 knots. I love all the taxi lights off to the left hand side. It's lit up like a Christmas tree. So a bit of a messy approach that. I had time enough to prepare for it, but I didn't quite get it right. But hopefully just about saved it in the end. There we go. Pretty strong winds landing there, 19 knots. Just off to the right hand side as well, so causing us to veer off course a little bit at the end on touchdown. So, here we are, Buenos Aires. We've arrived in Argentina. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the TBM 930 World Tour. From sunset Rio to cloudless Sao Paulo to stormy Porto Alegre, and then to nighttime Buenos Aires. This epic journey continues. If you've enjoyed, please click the subscribe button. Please also click the like button. If you want to hear about future videos that I stick up, either as part of the TBM 930 World Tour or the long and short haul flying I do both on MSFS 2020 and on Prepare 3D, please please click that bell and you'll hear about those as and when I stick them up. Just going to turn off the strobes. Going to park up over here. Don't forget also to take a look at my Instagram, I may well be doing a poll on where to go after Buenos Aires in the TBM 930 World Tour. But that's it for episode 11. Look out for episode 12 coming very, very soon as we head even further south in this fabulous, stunning, scenic continent. Thanks for watching.